Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan. A new battle of the wokes has begun. The woke people battling against each other to outwoke each other. And we've seen this occasionally, but this case is a particularly interesting one because finally one side of the woke is actually looking at history, looking at context, and, logically looking at events that actually occurred rather than being blind to it, ignoring it to service their own narrative. That's exactly what the other side of this argument is doing, but at least some of these people are legitimately trying to understand the truth behind a matter rather than the personal truth or my truth of the situation for the individual people involved. There is implicit truth in this debate, and it's a fascinating debate to see, and I'm just sitting back and watching it all. Now, this woke debate is all surrounding the movie Woman King. Now, I didn't know much about this movie. I think I'd seen a trailer months ago. It wasn't marketed to me very well, so I wasn't very aware that it was coming out, and this is actually something that I had asked for, so I do need to give this movie praise. I've always said, hey, it's better to adapt African mythology and African lore than changing European lore to service the race swapping diversity inclusion initiative, because there are so many great African stories that have never been told and need to be told. But they decided to choose this story, so that's kind of where my praise ends, because this is not one of those good stories you want to tell, and it still needs to be implicitly good. It still needs to be good for people to come out and see it. For those of you who don't know, this is about the African tribe, the Dahomey tribe, and they have a rather rocky history when it comes to the slave trade in Africa. They were very well known for selling slaves, kidnapping, taking slaves. It was actually the British Empire which came in and forced them to stop selling. So this movie, according to the trailer, seems to be anti-colonial. Well, it was the colonials that forced them to stop selling slaves. And it's just not a story that really people should focus on and make a story of an empowerment, because it's a female empowerment anti-colonial movie from what I heard from the trailers. Apparently the movie is a little bit more tribe versus tribe and the colonials are just kind of peripheral. Either way, it's kind of a bastardization of the true history, and for a lot of people out there who are saying, hey, I'm not going into expecting historical accuracy, we don't need to always talk about the major atrocities that happened in history, and that I actually agree with, but that's the major point of these people's story. It's not like George Washington. His major story was fighting in the Revolutionary French and Indian War and becoming president. Those are the major aspects of his presidency, his story. But him owning slaves, that's not necessarily something that needs to be included into a film about his life. Whereas the Dahomey tribe, them selling slaves is kind of their whole deal. So that's kind of the one thing of historical accuracy that needs to be included in their story. And it got really interesting with Viola Davis. She kind of started this all off about a week or two ago when she said everyone needs to go see this movie or they're going to be supporting the narrative that black women cannot lead the box office globally. And it all came after this question from an interviewer about black movies being a moment, like big and then they're gone. I haven't really noticed that. I mean, Blade is still one of the most popular superhero movies ever made, but whatever. And then she answers with this, and that was already the narrative being built. Whereas if you don't watch the movie, you're racist. They're already building that beforehand with Viola Davis's comments. And my response would be, hey, the movie still needs to be good. You can't just make a movie a global phenomenon that lasts more than a moment and have a leading the box office movie unless it's good. So yes, great. Black women can lead the global box office. Movie still has to be good, though. And apparently the argument kind of went away from the quality when Twitter found out about the true history of these events that the Dahomey tribe actually went through. And from what I can see, a lot of it is actually coming from Black Twitter. And it's very interesting to see a lot of the stuff. Like, we can do better when we know better. The gate is up and we all not letting this go. Hashtag boycott Woman King. Now, I'm very much against boycotts. Like, I'm not going to call for boycotts, but if ever other people participate, I don't care. It's just not something that I want to do. I want to give people the information to make the decisions for themselves, and however that turns out, that's kind of my point on YouTube. I don't call for boycotts, but it's interesting to see it coming from these people. And I do have to mention real fast, the Woman King is a really dumb name because Woman King is the definition of the word queen. So just call the movie Queen instead of Woman King. But regardless of that, there are some really great tweets here from a lot of people just calling for it. And it's really interesting to see. And a lot of it's coming from African American people who are standing up and finding out about this true history, and from woke people everywhere who are just like, hey, this puts us in a bad light. This puts black people in a bad light. And it's just not a story that needs to be on screen if they're not telling it properly. I think that's the biggest problem, is that they're changing the history to make it a female empowerment story. You take some really bad villains from history, and make it a female empowerment story, I don't think that's a change that people are going to take lightly. And it looks like Twitter isn't taking it lightly. And yeah, it's really going all crazy trending. And there's been a lot of stuff, some personal attacks against Viola Davis, which I don't agree with. But it is totally okay to call her out and say, hey, why are you doing this? This is really, really wrong. And it's just something really impressive to see these two groups trying to outwoke each other. And it's just not a good situation for them because they're changing history in this specific instance. But I'm just going to sit back and watch. I've heard some good things, some bad things about the movie. I'm not really interested at this point, especially with all the drama going on. I really want to see how far this goes and see if this affects the movie in any way, shape, or form, because Twitter doesn't affect the real world in a lot of cases, or at least shouldn't, but the companies seem to react to it. And, in this case, it might, because this is such a grievous misstep in historical adaptation and just common decency. I mean, you took villains and made them into heroes. That's not necessarily something that you want to see, especially from people who did some of these heinous things that the Dahomey tribe actually participated in. Overall, I am really excited to see where things go, but it's going to take a while for the true repercussions of these events to truly unfold. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.